Welcome to the Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast, dedicated to exploring the interesting journeys of the people in the provincial construction industry. Presented by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association, produced by Gale Force Winds. Join us as we chat with the inspirational individuals that ensure the continued growth of the construction industry and the province of Newfoundland and Labrador.
And welcome to the Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast, presented by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association and produced by Gale Force Winds. And on that note, I'm Alan Dale, and this is my good buddy from the East End of St. John's, Jerry Carew. How are you, Jerry?
I couldn't be more excited, Alan, to move into a new venture with the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association. You know, I built my career in advertising and worked hard every day. But when you work in advertising, you're building something, but it's something that you can't see. You're building traffic to a website. You're building traffic to someone's business. What I like about the Construction Association is they build things that you can see. You know milestones, and I love being around them because that's it's different than the career that I had. So I'm looking forward to delving into Sandy's life and getting a sense of what his journey has been like.
Absolutely, Jerry. And building seems to be the key for today. So, Sandy, without further ado, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
All right. Thank you, Jerry and Alan. It's been a pleasure to sit with you guys and to give us your time. So I am Sandy Murphy, and I am the current chair of the NLCA. I've been in this construction business for 36 years now. Actually, be 36 years the end of July.
That's pretty good for a 40-year-old.
Well, that's what I thought, right? I started young. Or, I would rather think my father started me young. So for me personally, guys, I was raised on a farm, a small self-sufficient farm in the country. Yep. And I led my career into engineering as a start. Civil engineering was my goal. And to pay my way through university, I worked in the woods, cutting pulpwood for the paper mill in Port Hawkesbury. Now, back in '83, when I graduated, the industry was struggling and it was very difficult to get work, much different from today. And at that time, I did some work as an inspector for a couple of different engineering firms. And then I got laid off. And in 1985, I got a job offer in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia to go to work with a construction company. Now, at that time, you would take any job you could get. So I was very happy to get it, even though it wasn't directly related to engineering. But once I started my career down that path, I decided to keep it because I enjoyed doing construction a great deal. In '87, I had married in '85, I had married a girl from Newfoundland. In '87, we decided to move to Newfoundland to look for some work here in Newfoundland and got a job with a company called Lundrigan's Construction, which at that time had been well established for many years. And then in '92, Lundrigan's Construction had closed their doors and they were done with construction. But at that time, the NLCA, of course, was very active, and most construction companies and suppliers were members of it. So I attended all their meetings, their AGMs, and their West Coast meetings because I was involved in the industry. And I realized even then, early on, the importance the NLCA played in the construction industry. The ideas and the information that it brought to the contractors to keep everybody abreast of what's happening in the industry. But moving on from there, when Lundrigan's went out of business, I stayed in construction and went with a company called Merit Management in Deer Lake for 5 years. I finished up there. They had closed their doors after that, and I came with the company that I'm working with currently called Brook Construction. The interesting thing about that is that the gentleman who owns this company had actually interviewed me for a job when I went to work with Lundrigan's.
Is that right?
So he was one of the key people. Yes, one of the key people actually in getting me to start working in Newfoundland in the first place. So kind of came full circle that I ended up with Brook after. But I mean, he was a great gentleman to work with. We enjoyed working together back in that day. And when he went on to build his own company, I was quite pleased to get a job with him. Now, we have seen in the last few years a major amount of changes in the construction industry. And there's a lot of time and effort being put in to keep up with what's happening. A lot of, if you're familiar with P3s, which is the new hospital in Corner Brook, it's been the new long-term care centers, both in Grand Falls and Gander, a long-term care in Corner Brook, and the recently awarded one for the new mental health facility in St. John's. And they're now looking at the penitentiary to be a P3.
Wow.
So a lot of that, has generated interest, and it's new to our industry in Newfoundland.
Sandy, I want to take it back a little bit. You talked about you had a little bit of a pivot there at one point, and you went into the construction industry. What was it about the industry that hooked you right out of the gate? What was it about that particular lifestyle that really caught your attention as a young person?
Well, so as a young person and having worked outdoors all of my life up to that point, which would be 25 years old, I enjoyed being outdoors. Right. And the idea of being locked into an office for me had become very difficult, very difficult. However, when I went into construction, even though I worked from an office, there is a lot of field work as well. You get to go out into the field, visit the projects, see how they progress. You get to meet a lot of the workers. It's very interesting when you can sit down and talk with the workers. What are they doing on your project? Where did they come from? And, what is their interests and their goals in the industry? Do they intend to move up the line? Would they rather become foreman to look after projects someday? Or are they just satisfied to remain as, whether it be laborers, carpenters, electricians, or plumbers? So when I did start working in the construction, I didn't know what to expect, but I very quickly latched onto it because I realized it was a challenge for me.
Right.
It was also a great challenge to, you see what you work on. So when you first started and alluded to that, advertising versus construction, there is a great deal of satisfaction comes from it when you take a project, you estimate what the value is, and you take it to completion, that at the end of the day, you stand back and you say, I was a part of that team that built that building. Students. And as a company with Brook Construction, we do hire work-term students.
Excellent.
We have 2 on now. Now we had a young engineer on who has gone back to do his next block and his final block, actually. So he's doing civil engineering, the same thing I did. Now, I was out, and this isn't a project in St. John, so I was out on the project and talking to him about where he thought his career might go. I talked to him about the engineering and what he's been doing so far in engineering. So as you go through engineering, there's, several different parts of it that you learn. And I said to him, so, have you done your concrete design in that? And yeah, he had just finished it. I said, okay, that's interesting. I said, what is the biggest course now you're going to enter into for your last term? And he said, structural steel design. Oh, I said, that's really neat, because here you have this huge building that's all steel, and we should take a walk through and I can point some stuff out. So I said, how much education have you gotten on structural steel? How much do you understand about it? And his comment was, I really don't have any education on it. And then it was like the lights are going off for me, because I'm like, wow, buddy, you're in for a treat, right?
Yeah.
And the thing about it was, when I went through engineering, I had nobody to really take me by a hand and explain it to me. And not just me, but all my fellow students at the time. You had to learn it as you went, and it was from books, but it wasn't practical.
Yeah.
And now I had an opportunity to take a young student and give him a practical tour of what he's going to learn after the fact. So I took the time and walked through all the building, explained how the engineering connections worked, all the different components and the names that they put on those components, so that I said, when you enter into your last block here in engineering, you will at least understand the terminology when it's being thrown at you.
Sandy, go ahead.
No, so I was just going to say, I would say to young people, there's a massive opportunity to have a great career in construction now. And all it takes, you have to get yourself into the industry. And tradespeople, I have found, make great foremen because they understand the work. They physically perform the work and they learn to understand it. But there's a lot of room to move there, because companies are dying to get these young people to say, I want to take them drawings. I want to know how to do that. And I want to lead the team that would be under me.
Sandy, sorry for interrupting you. I just want to touch on one thing, and Alan and I talk about this a lot, leadership. You're describing a foreman. It seems to me that person has to exhibit real leadership, and the people that they motivate have to have respect for them. And can you just touch a little bit on what makes a foreman a leader?
Well, the word respect, I would put that at the forefront, because they do have to have respect of their workers. And when you have respect of your workers, it doesn't matter what field you're in, you will accomplish a lot of great things. As a leader, you have to be open to their suggestions. I mean, anybody who has children, I remember I only have one, but when my daughter came along at 5 and 6 years old, she would say things that sounded off the wall, but then I would stop for a minute and think, holy smokes, what she said does actually make sense.
Yeah.
Even though it's not true, it made perfect sense from her view. So you have to respect these workers and what they got to contribute, and you give them that space to contribute. You ask for their ideas, and most times they will come up with solutions to problems that you've had a great deal of effort to solve. They also got to be, a foreman has to become very knowledgeable. He has to know his industry when he becomes a foreman, and that takes time. So that doesn't mean that and that goes for any business. Again, that doesn't mean you come out of school and I'm going to be a leader and a foreman. If you can do that, kudos to you, but you really do need time and experience. You need to know how to read people and understand them. And even that in itself is a chore, because a lot of times you almost feel like you're babysitting people sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But you have to learn how to do that and to work with them.
Yeah.
And understand and realize and accept the fact that everybody's different.
100%. Sandy, we always ask our guests to leave the audience with a piece of advice. You've had a wonderful career. A long career in this industry. What would that piece of advice be? What would you say to a young Sandy Murphy who just arrived in Lunenburg? How would you explain the industry to that person right now? What would your piece of advice be to them?
I would say that if you wanted your career to be in construction, that you embrace it, and embrace it with everything that's in you, to want to rise to the challenges, to take them head on and to learn and carry that knowledge forward, to set yourself goals and make those goals lofty enough that it is something that you got to achieve and you can be proud of it when you're done. And that as you grow older, as we had talked earlier, that your day is going to come that you're going to have a lot of self-satisfaction in passing down what you have learned to the next generation.
Sandy, great advice for sure. Jerry, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Sandy, you've talked about so much and it's so interesting. As I said at the beginning, a career in building advertising is a challenge, but a career, I look in awe at what you and your colleagues in the industry do. The buildings, the bridges, the roads, and whatever you're building is just, it's almost like an art form. When I drive by the core science building and see that building being built, the various hospitals around, the schools, it boggles my mind to see it being dug, and then the steel and the concrete and the pieces that all go into it. So and I appreciate your comments on the foreman's leadership, because as Alan and I have focused on many of our podcasts, the comments you made, I think, are transferable to any industry. So I just want to say thank you for participating in our inaugural Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast. I really appreciate it.
Yes, and thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Well, what a great episode of Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast. It was wonderful to be in conversation with President Sandy Murphy. I mean, there's no doubt about it. This industry can be summed up in one word, and that is opportunity. Here's an industry that believes in continuous improvement. And if you're the type of person that wants to be outdoors and wants to see the results of your work play out in front of you, this may well be the industry for you. If you're somebody that believes in robotics and automation, this may well be the industry for you. It sounds like an inclusive and a respectful environment, and quite honestly, it pays pretty well right now. So I think there's a great opportunity for the youth of Newfoundland and Labrador in the construction industry. I'll leave our guests with my own piece of advice, and that is the construction industry needs more Sandy Murphys. Thanks very much, Sandy.
Thank you.
My name is Saurabh Dhawan. I work for Construct Connect. I am the Senior Manager of Product Marketing for Data Innovation. I've been with the company about a little over 9 years, and it's been a great ride. I've had a few roles here during my stay. It's pretty exciting. I've just taken on this new role in May, so learning a lot and getting ready to produce.
Saurabh, where did your journey begin here, man? How did you find yourself positioned in Newfoundland, working with the Construction Association, working with this great company? Tell us a little bit about that.
I'm based in Toronto. We work with the Newfoundland Labrador Construction Association remotely, which is super easy these days, thanks to all the technology. I grew up in New Delhi, India, and I studied high school up till high school there, and then I moved to Canada. I moved to Toronto, took a diploma program in business at Humber College, and then took a degree program in business again in entrepreneurship at Ryerson University. Took a master's in technology and innovation at Ryerson as well. I got, while I was still studying, I got hired into this industry in the government tendering and e-procurement field. And you know what, I've always been a technology guy, so it was very exciting to be able to kind of help automate government tendering and things like that. And that's really the mission of NLCA. I was pretty present on LinkedIn, and Construct Connect noticed me on LinkedIn, and they said, "Hey, why don't you come work for us?" And it was a great, exciting opportunity, and I started working there. In about 2017, we made our partnership with the Newfoundland Labrador Construction Association. We had actually been building alliances with construction associations across Canada because, we realized that we're all in the same industry. The construction associations are very, very, very good at managing and maintaining relationships within the industry, training, safety training, etc. So we wanted to provide them the best technology that we could provide, so that their members can, connect with each other. And, that's our motto, Construct Connect. We connect people in the industry. So we've NLCA was the first one to use our software for their members starting in 2017. And we've got a new and upgraded version of the software now. It's been built from scratch, called Construct Connect Project Intelligence. So we're upgrading the NLCA members now as part of our new partnership to this new platform very soon.
So much to unpack there, Saurabh. I mean, I want to get into the technology. I want to get into how important relationship development and collaboration is in this industry. But I want to take a step back a little bit, and I want to know, why did you point your finger on Canada to go to school? There's great programs in India, fantastic universities, technically focused country. Why did you pick Canada?
Canada has a great reputation around the world. I think people know that, right? Like when you look at the lists of best countries to live in, Canada used to be right on the top on that one. My sister and brother-in-law, actually, they'd applied to move to Canada. And that was the same time I was graduating from high school. And my parents were like, we'd like you to kind of also go there. Maybe you guys can, set up a base there. It was between Canada and the US, and frankly, Canada just seems like a much friendlier place, and it's got, so much natural beauty. And I love the fact that in Canada, people take care of each other. It's not just everybody for themselves, right? And that's the kind of environment I thrive in. So that was kind of part of the reasoning there.
That's fantastic. You're right. There's something about the Canadian embrace, eh? We have a way to kind of welcome and make you feel right at home. This is part of your home. We're all in this together. And it sounds to me like that is the same style of relationship that exists within the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association. It is a very welcoming group, and they're very supportive of one another. Tell me a little bit about the importance of collaboration, specifically in this industry.
Well, as you know, I mean, it takes a lot to build a construction project, right? It is absolutely, it's a mammoth task. And you just, I mean, if you don't collaborate, if you don't communicate, if you don't truly align your interests, amongst all the parties that are involved in the construction project, you are not going to get a good result, right? There's, for every project, there's the on time, on budget, and on quality, like it's got to be, right? And one of those always slips. And the only way to complete that triangle is to truly collaborate and align everybody's interests right from the get-go, right? Like from the moment the owner has an idea about the project, the owner is already involving the community. They're involving, the stakeholders from the public to everybody who's around, right? The neighbors and the architects, and you'll start to, build an idea of what this project might be. And then as you kind of keep progressing through the different stages, you want to involve as many different people, the engineers, because it's got to be a safe project. It's got to, be functional. It's got to actually want the user of the building actually has to want to use this building and
right.
Feel happy working in there or doing whatever business they're going to do in there, right? So, mostly to do with that. I think the project management part of it, I think, is very important to collaborate.
So, Saurabh, I mean, it sounds to me like there's a lot of moving parts. Almost, you seem to be like running a design of experiments here. There's just so many things happening. Tell me how technology comes into play here.
Traditionally, the way things have, I mean, we've got a newspaper that we publish that's, been published for over 110 years, I believe. We've got another publication, a newspaper that's been published since 1927. And that's how business used to be done, right? When an owner wanted to build something, they would put out an ad, a tender ad in that newspaper. It was called the Daily Commercial News and Construction Record, right? And people would read it, and not everybody had a subscription to the paper. People would go to the construction associations to read this paper. It would not be on the bulletin board, and you'd be like, okay, this is a project that I can participate in. And depending on, you know, who actually got to see it, you were able to kind of, work with the owner. Fast forward to today, or, you know, the last 10 years, technology has become ubiquitous. We've all got our smartphones, we've got our computers, we're tied to our computers or to technology, and we're constantly in the know, which what it does is it increases the efficiency of communication between people. So when an owner puts a project out there, the owner's not just getting the people that happen to have seen it. The owner's getting the attention of everybody possible, because the architects are going to see it, engineers are going to see it, people start talking about it, the general contractors are going to see it, they're going to send out an invitation to subcontractors. So everybody really has a chance to participate. And it is really amazing in the government sector, because the government sector has a mandate for fair, open, and transparent bidding. And they have an obligation to make sure that any construction project is equally accessible to all Canadian suppliers. You know, those are exact words from the Agreement on Internal Trade. Just technology, you know, really kind of makes sure that everybody has a fair playing field, right? It's the great equalizer, so to speak.
Right.
And, you know, what happens is the communications in this industry are not very simple, right? There's documents attached. Then you've got to look at the documents. You used to have to like roll out the blueprints and do the takeoffs, you know, by hand, by ruler. But now you can do them on the screen with our software. You used to have to call your subcontractors and say, hey, you know what, I want prices for this. Now you can just hit one click. You've sent it out. You can see how many people have opened that invitation. You can see which subs are going to bid on it, which subs are not going to bid on it. So if you need to send out more invitations, you can. You can see your coverage for each trade. Imagine being a general contractor trying to do all of that without technology.
Wow.
So, you know, putting all those prices together and then, you know, submitting the bid to the owner.
Many employers are looking for things like an ability to communicate effectively, ability to work within teams, and a desire to learn and the like, and leadership ability. What are the kind of skill sets and traits that you're looking for in people in the construction industry?
So we probably have to look at it two separate ways, right? There is the labor jobs, and then there's the sort of office and, you know, field jobs. For the labor jobs, you know, if you're technically inclined, if you are hardworking, and if you know how to hang with the boys and get the work done, and or the guys and gals, because you know what, there's a huge influx of women in the construction industry, which is very exciting. Some of my friends and colleagues, they're deeply involved in women in construction groups, so it's super exciting. And then, you know, for the more office type jobs, if you have an inclination towards software, using, you know, complicated software, or understanding, because if you can be an expert at a particular software in this industry, which is really how I make my bread and butter, the sky's the limit, right? We've got 3D BIM technologies. We've got, you know, so now you can literally take a building model, and, you know, not only is it the 2 dimensions, now it's in 3 dimensions, but then there's the 4th dimension of time, and the 5th dimension of cost that can be added in there. And then there's a 7th dimension of functionality. So you can actually take a 3D model of a building, and you can simulate the airflow within that building, and, you know, the different temperatures and things like that. So while you're sitting behind a desk, you can figure all of that out before you even hit a shovel to the ground. So a lot of technology jobs. There's estimating jobs. Technology software probably the number one skill. But then again, I mean, it's a people world, right? So you've got to want to not only got to work with people, but like to work with people, right? Or at least for 8 hours a day, right? I know everybody likes to kind of go home and shut off. We all do that, but when you're on the job, you've got to want to align, work with other people with all the interests aligned, and figure out solutions. Like a problem solving skill is very important. Things like that, right? And then there's some basic skills beyond that, right?
It sounds like an inclusive world. I mean, it sounds like everybody's welcome there. There's room for everybody in the construction industry. Would you agree with that?
Room. 100%. There's lots of room. There are jobs that didn't exist even 5 years ago, right? And new jobs are being created each day. You could be, I get fascinated by mining, right? I mean, that's another facet of the construction industry. You could be sitting in your bedroom, 5,000 miles away and being operated a mining machine that is digging for gold or whatever anywhere, right? There's a lot of 3D printing machines now. We're doing 3D printing, 3D printed buildings. They're on the border of Mexico. They've created a whole community with 3D printed buildings using materials that are locally sourced. So you can imagine, all of this requires people.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but these are good paying jobs we're talking about here.
Great paying jobs. Great paying jobs. Yeah. Canada is actually one of the fastest growing construction markets in the world. I would say probably number one or number two. The amount of construction we're doing, because we've been blessed with all this amazing land, right? And we're big on immigration, which kind of slowed down during COVID, but I think it's ramping up again. So as we're huge on immigration, especially under a liberal government. And the more people that come in, they need houses to live. They need business, because a lot of immigrants open businesses when they come here. They need places for business. They need roads. They need highways, tunnels, sewers. Everything needs to kind of happen, right? And a lot of international companies like Google and Microsoft are getting very attracted to Canada, especially the big cities, because they know there's a lot of technology talent here. You've probably heard of Google building something at the Toronto waterfront. It's kind of like a little mini city, right? BlackBerry is huge, just west of us. A lot of technology companies are, just coming in here for the talent and, placing them right in these hubs.
And more talent is coming every day, as you say. With immigration, not only does it create the need for more housing, but the folks that are coming here, they're bringing skills too. They're bringing a new way to look at things, right? And it's a beautiful combination that's happening right now.
Yeah, Canada's huge on innovation. We do innovation really well, and we do management really well. But there's skills that we, bring in from outside to do some of the more technical, in the weeds sort of stuff that we require people to do, right? I mean, like my whole career, literally, like my professional career started with a friend of mine. We used to go to college together at Humber College. We became, really good friends in the first year, and we started studying together, and we became best friends. We spent a lot of time together. We used to live in the same house. And, he went his separate way working for a company. I went back to India for a bit. When I came back, I started studying, and, I met up with him again. And one day he just calls me and he says, hey, I would like you to come work for me. I'm a team leader at this company. I'd like you to come work for me. And I was like, well, that sounds fantastic. I went in for the interview, got the job. And that was the beginning of my career. And from there, LinkedIn kind of brought me here. But the power of connections with people is what I'm trying to get at. That there is no substitute for that. No matter how technologically intense we get, there is no substitute for the human connection. And the way you build those connections is by being of service. If there's one thing beyond reproduction that the human race is here to do, is to build connections and be of service to others, and that that they kind of work hand in hand. for the young people out there, I would say sometimes you might feel that what you're doing right now is not important, but that is exactly where the universe has put you for a very important reason. And you've got to do the best you that you can be at whatever you're doing right now. And the next opportunity will unfold itself, and you will see it. You'll realize that it has come as a direct result of the work that you've done.
That is so on point, and I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, absolutely. Things unfold in front of you if you just allow them to unfold, right? And that is a great piece of advice. Jerry, your final thoughts.
Well, I've really enjoyed listening to you talk, Saurabh, and I think kudos to the team at the NLCA for bringing Construct Connect on board. Given what you have said about connection, what your company is doing in terms of industry news, project information, you put that together with people, this is a recipe for a lot of success. So I just want to say thanks for coming on board with us today.
Absolutely. Yeah, we really look forward to, bringing our new software to all the NLCA members. There's a project intelligence. We've got the takeoff solutions that they need, and we've got the bid management solutions that they need as well.
Well, another wonderful edition of Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast presented by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association. Great conversation talking about the importance of relationship development, collaboration, and I guess at the end of the day, the opportunity that exists in the construction industry. It just sounds fantastic, and it spans a gamut of trades and occupations. So there's room in there for everybody in this wonderful and inclusive environment. I always leave the audience with my own piece of advice, and that is the construction industry needs more Saurabh Duran. Thank you very much, Saurabh.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Sure. So I'm Patrick Lafreniere, and I'm the Director of Projects for JCB Construction Canada. I take care of the Atlantic region, and JCB were headquarters in Brossard, Quebec. And a few years ago, they decided to open up a branch in Newfoundland, very fitting as they want to expand their operations. And I was sought out, and I decided to take on the role. It's been very challenging so far, but nothing in construction is easy. So challenges are a thing of being a director and a project manager.
Patrick, I'm excited to find out why JCB had a focus on Atlantic Canada, but we're going to get to that in a minute. Tell me where you came from. What's your story?
So I'm not originally a Newfoundlander. I moved to Newfoundland in 1999, and I come from Ottawa. I was in Ottawa. I was in the IT industry. And at 24 years old, I thought that I had kind of reached a peak. I was reporting to the CEO of a company I worked for. And I said, wow, this is it. This can't be it. So I decided to make a lifestyle change, and a quite drastic one. So I moved to Newfoundland, and that's where actually I entered the construction industry. More specifically, I entered structural steel as a trade contractor. And I had a very, very good mentor there. His name is Roy Parsons, and he's still very active in the company that I work for. And he taught me everything I know. If you're in the steel industry and you know what a piece of angle iron is or a channel, well, at that time I didn't. And so he taught me everything I knew. After a few months, or I forget exactly, maybe 6, I said to Roy, I said, Roy, out of all due respect, I've appreciated everything that you've done, but I feel that the person sitting in my seat should have an education in construction. And so we spoke about it, and I thought about going to school, and I went to Kona at the College of the North Atlantic, and I did the architectural program. A very, very good program, very well renowned. Lots of good students come out of that program. And I started part-time, and after a while, I said, geez, it's going to take me, 10 years to do this program. So I decided to leave Steel Fab. That's the company, by the way, and finished off that diploma program full-time. And, and I continued in construction ever since. So I've been in construction now, over 20 years.
Well, that says a lot right there. Tell me about the experience at the college. How was that program for you?
Oh my God. At first, I was considering the civil engineering program, and then, like I said, after speaking to my mentor Roy and his son, he suggested architectural, and I looked up what that meant. It was probably more in line, actually, of what I wanted to do was buildings. Civil was more, I found road work, groundwork, surveying, perhaps. Not something that I wasn't too keen about. Well, I definitely didn't want to be outdoors in the rain all the time. So I looked up the architectural program, and the description and the course content was a lot more in line with what I thought I would do. Construction probably started in my early child days. My father and I used to do stuff around the house and at a cottage. Of course, in Newfoundland, we call it a cabin. We call it a cottage back where I'm from, and it's a lake, not a pond. And so, we did a lot of renovation stuff and taught me how to measure and cut. And he gave me, maybe that's where it stemmed from, was building things. And so the architectural program was good.
Was there a pretty good connection to the industry while you were going to college? Has that changed over time in your last 20 odd years?
The connection to the industry, well, the instructors definitely did a good job to advocate for the students when it came to the industry. There always has been calls from industry companies seeking, good students that are graduates from all these types of programs. I find the College of North Atlantic really puts out a great success rate and a very high aptitude of students. So sometimes the pickings are slim, which is a good thing, because if there's too many, then the market gets flooded and the competitiveness is a lot more, right?
Yeah. Is there a lot of hands-on style experiential learning in the college with the construction industry? I would think that that's kind of an industry that would almost be a perfect match.
So in the architectural program, it's not a co-op program. At least it wasn't back in the day. I don't believe that it is today. I'd have to look into that. I haven't. Unlike some other programs, you are correct. You do so much schooling and then you have a co-op session throughout the summertime. The architectural program is not. So it's 3 years flat, and you don't stop. It's a very intense program. Some semesters, I believe there was 6 or 7 courses at the one time.
Yeah. Patrick, you've really picked up the accent. I love it. It's fantastic. I want to talk to you about I want to talk to you a little bit about your mentor and the importance of mentorship in your industry right now. So you had a mentor, helped you along the way. Tell us a little bit about that relationship and the importance of that was for you then and it is now.
Well, listen, mentoring, I think, in construction and I think in any industry, you definitely need someone to look up to, and others after you will need the same. And so, I like to think that I can become a mentor, and I have been to others. My door is open for questions. As a matter of fact, I currently work with an architect, and they have very young, aspiring draftspeople coming up in the construction world, looking at projects, and they call on me and ask questions, and I said, yes, ask all the questions in the world. It's not a problem. And so my mentor back when I moved here and I started in the construction industry, like I said, I didn't know what an angle iron was or a channel. It was new to me. Estimating and drafting was new to me. And so, I did learn a lot, and no question is ever wrong, right? You just ask a question, and it's not embarrassing because I chair a lot of meetings. And in many meetings, I say, well, perhaps there's 10 of us here at the table. And if 10 of us know 98% of the information, I mean, it's a good day,
Yeah.
Don't walk away without the knowledge.
100%. And Patrick, you're heavily involved in the Construction Association yourself. Talk to me a little bit about the importance of that association, not only for the industry members, but maybe for people that are considering the industry as a career choice.
So I think let's talk about considering the industry. I've been on the board of the NLCA now, I think 6 years. I started as a director at large. I then became the general contractor section chair. And then I moved up to the executive, which is third vice chair, second vice chair. I currently sit as the first vice chair. So next year at the AGM, I will become the chair of the association. I'm very looking forward to that. Also this year, I joined the board of directors for the Canadian Construction Association.
Wow.
Okay. So the youth. I mean, I read so many posts as to where the future is going and all this kind of stuff. And I've spoke about it, I've written about it, and I say, parents, if your children are into Xbox, PlayStation, drones, this type of stuff, you have a future, believe it or not, in construction, because tower cranes one day soon will become manless. We currently have excavators and stuff like that that are manless. They are operated from a control center elsewhere, and they're operating. Drones to take 3D pictures of buildings, of sites, of terrain. That's very predominant in the construction industry today. On top of that, there are certain trades that are becoming very old school, and it's very hard to attract the youth. I like to think masonry is one of those. I don't know of a 22-year-old that wants to pick up a 10-inch masonry block that weighs 50 pounds, do that 100 times a day in and day out as a career. Oh, but all of a sudden you put what's called an exoskeleton on themselves and they become RoboCop. They can lift 50 pounds, no problem. And a lot of people don't know that the industry is moving in that direction. A lot of automation, a lot of machinery now being developed for construction.
Patrick, that's a fantastic insight. I mean, the level of it, I was unaware of the level of industrial automation involved in the construction. And I mean, the whole concept of using an exoskeleton to strengthen somebody in that industry, I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, who would have thought that would find its way into the construction industry? But you're so right. People look at the construction industry or many other industries, agriculture is another, and they have a preconceived notion about it. And it's interesting that there's just so much more to it than what we just think that it might be. I'm excited to hear that. And what type of steps are you guys taking to engage youth? And what would you tell a young person right now about the association and the future?
I mean, through the NLCA, we do a lot of advocacy and we do a lot of campaigns. And so we also have a center of eco-fashion that, we try to portray and showcase, I should say, new and exciting, technologies that are coming out to the market. We talked about mentoring earlier. So I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, my wife's husband probably wasn't satisfied with the career choice he had chosen at the time, and he asked, "What should I do?" I said, "Become a plumber." "Become a plumber?" I said, "Yes, become a plumber." Being a plumber is not about unplugging a toilet, and that's a stigma. People think sometimes there's a stigma around plumbing that it's a dirty job. It is not a dirty job. It's a phenomenal job. You get to work on very sophisticated pipe systems. I've had the opportunity, the great opportunity to work on very complex projects, and you go into these mechanical rooms and the finesse of different types of plumbing, copper and stainless and cast iron. I've worked with a lot of great trade contractors that you look at how military like all these plumbing stacks are aligned. It's fascinating. It's an art. Right. And so like I said, maybe 10 years ago, today he's a journeyman plumber. He's Red Seal, something like that. I think that's the right terminology. And, he's doing very well for himself. And he works in Corner Brook and loves it and has been for a long time.
I'm interested in the sustainability of building design and things like that, and how that is got to be intriguing to somebody looking at the future, right?
So okay, well, that's a different element. So the sustainability of buildings, and again, let's get back to the youth. I said earlier that there's so much in buildings today. There's so much technology. I'm sure I think it was on LinkedIn, I saw a post where now there's a building out there, the windows, the cladding system, the roofing system is one big solar panel.
Wow.
Let's listen, solar panels is not new, but to start thinking this way, I saw another post, Tesla has developed solar panel shingles, so you can put shingles on your roof, right?
Yeah,
and I know I get the fact that it's more maybe more residential industry. I'm just saying that the sustainability, getting more green buildings, and so longevity, that technology in construction and understanding it, that's where the youth will tap into. Automation of the building itself, smart buildings. It's no longer turning a valve on a pump anymore. This is done in a computer room at a central station, with controls, and it's again, it's maybe well over my head in terms of understanding all this technology, because I don't understand it. So I ask the questions. Tell me what this is about, and how can I help make it better and make your job better and easier? I remove the constraints.
Yeah.
But everything you just described to me there, Patrick, shows that the industry is primed for the creation of even more style of work, because as it evolves and as buildings become smarter, they require different skill sets to manage all of that, right? It's a very interesting thing. I loved your analogy, by the way, when you were talking about a plumber working with military precision, because as well, when the whole movement of liquid around a building, it's for most people, we don't realize what's going on, right? And it's only when it all stops working that we're really concerned about the whole thing.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly like the military, right? We're just trucking along, everything's good, and we don't really understand what they're doing until we really need them. And then we say, oh, that's what those guys do, what they do. So I loved your analogy. Sure. It was a fantastic one. Patrick, you've had a great journey. You've certainly done a lot of different things. You've made a bit of a transition early on and went into this industry and had a great success with it. We often ask our guests to leave the audience with a small piece of advice. What might, what would you like to say to the folks that might be entering the industry as a piece of advice?
So we touched on mentoring, we touched on the youth. And I said earlier that, I've had the opportunity to mentor a young person not too long ago from an architect firm. And that person asked me, we were on the job site and we're walking around, and that person said to me kind of privately, we're just two of us. He said, I'm afraid to ask questions. And I said, this was my response. And I said, I used these exact words I'm about to tell you not too long ago myself. And here's what I said. I told the contractor, I said, I do not know the right questions to ask you because I've never done your job before. So if you don't tell me the information you need from me, I cannot help you. And the person who was with me kind of said, it was several thoughts in that person's mind, I'm sure. Yeah. A person that my stature, I'll say, compared to his, wow, you had to ask those questions? I said, absolutely, I did. Because I don't know everything. And I said that earlier today. I don't know everything. But I put 10 people in a room and for sure we'll come up with 98% of the solution. So don't be afraid. So here's my response. Do not be afraid to ask questions. There are no wrong questions to ask, because the more questions you ask, the more educated you'll become, the more able you'll be able to help others. And naturally, people will come to you for more.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. No matter what industry you're in, don't be afraid to ask questions. And you hit the nail right on the head. And that is, talking to somebody, I often say, help me so that I can help you. I need to understand, right?
That's exactly what I did.
No, that's a fantastic piece of advice. Jerry, your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, this whole thing about asking questions, it's just a phenomenal topic, because I think back to some of my days in the university, many business meetings over my 30-year career, where frankly, Patrick, I didn't ask the question, and I came out of there after, and I thought, why didn't I ask that bloody question? But it's part of you sometimes. Even I find as I'm older now, I do not really mind exposing what I don't know. At this stage of my career is like, if you judge me as I will, you're probably similar to me and Alan. But yeah, what a great advice. Last thing I want to say to you is that, I think the NLCA, the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association, is in great hands. The sense of professionalism that is exuding out of you, I just want to listen to you for more time. Unfortunately, we have constraints on time on this, but you're in good hands. The NLC is in good hands with someone like yourself. Thanks for coming on board with us today and sharing your experience.
Absolutely, anytime. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I hope that I've been able to at least help one person with this podcast today.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, what another wonderful edition of the Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast, presented, of course, by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association. Patrick Lafournier is clearly a guy who's not afraid to take on a challenge. What I really enjoyed about our conversation here today, Patrick's the type of guy puts smart people in a room and then he listens to them. And if you're the type of person who wants to get in that room and you want to solve some challenges in the construction industry, well, this industry may well be for you. It certainly sounds like there's a great deal of opportunity there. There's great opportunity to have a wonderful and rewarding career. And you've got some great mentors there. You got people that are willing to help you along the way. And I think that that's really a great recipe for success. I often leave the guests or our audience with my own small piece of advice, and that is the construction industry needs more Patrick Lafournier. Thank you very much, Patrick.
You're very welcome.
I'm excited to talk to a leader in the construction industry and a woman in the construction industry, frankly. Take it away, Alan.
Well, this is great, Jerry. I'm certainly excited to get into this conversation. There's a lot going on in Newfoundland and Labrador, and the Construction Association is front and center of all of that. And we're here to talk about people that are in that, inspirational people that are in it. And on that note, Candace, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
My name is Candace Dominics. Currently, I am the project manager for Brook Construction, Central Newfoundland. I've been with Brook for about a year and a half. And before that, I was with LSG Construction for 14 years. Right out of university is where I started.
So where did you go to university, Candace?
I did actually 1 year of Memorial, and then I did the Architectural Engineering Technology program at College of North Atlantic in St. John's.
What was that program like?
Challenging.
Yeah.
So it prepared you well for real world, by the sound of it.
Oh, lots of hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and what was it about that program that caught your interest at a young age?
Grade 11 design tech class. That's where I made my decision. Yeah.
Really?
That's where
tell me about that, Candace. What was that like? So explain to me, you were in grade 11. What happened there that tweaked you right there?
I had a teacher who introduced us to the planning to the layouts of new buildings and homes is where we started. Not commercial. I didn't anticipate commercial at that time, but I love the idea of building something new.
Well, that's interesting, right? And how many times do we hear the story that a teacher made an impact on somebody that kind of altered their career path? That must be fascinating. Are you still in touch with that teacher now?
No, he retired, but his name was Mr. 80. I'll remember it forever. I went to PwC in St. John's for a few years, and I'll never forget that teacher.
Well, that's fantastic, right? It's that kind of thing that spark people into a career path that you never would have thought. And, you know, I think that a real acknowledgement needs to go out to people that educate and inspire young people to kind of get motivated towards a career. So when you started down that program in St. John's at the university level, very challenging. Were you connected with industry at all through that? Or was it very academic in its fashion?
Very academic. I had no out in the field knowledge of any kind. I did not know what I was getting myself into.
Right. So when you graduated and you went into the field, what was that experience like for you?
Culture shock.
Yeah. Tell me about
Definitely. I think we all got some preconceived notions about what things will be like when we graduate and what we're going to do, but it's quite terrifying. Yeah. So when you have this pretty piece of paper who says you done it academically, where's your next step? Mm-hmm. And it's pretty scary. And I kind of stumbled into a job in Gander. Never set foot in Gander before in my life. And the NLCA connection is what got me this job, actually.
Where'd you say you grew up again?
I grew up in English Harbour West on the south coast. Nice. But from the time I was 14 to 17, my mom decided to go back to school in St. John's. So we spent 3 years in St. John's.
Interesting.
So you got into the field. It was a bit of a culture shock. Tell me, were there mentors in there that helped you through? Were there networks that you established that helped you through that initial phase?
I had another student. He had graduated the year before me. And when I graduated, I didn't know which way to go. And I reached out to him, and his boss was a member of the NLCA on the board of directors. And at that time, I thought maybe we could start doing some drafting on the side until maybe a full-time position came up. And keep in mind, at that time, I only considered more the design part of it, the drafting, AutoCAD work. So he had reached out to her. She was on the board of directors with my first boss, knew that he was looking for somebody, and they put me in contact with him. So that's how that started.
That's how that started. So that network worked out well for you. And it sounds to me like the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association has been a part of your career right from the beginning.
From day one. So my first boss ended up becoming the president of the NLCA, the chair. And he was very active for a number of years. And he is by far my mentor. Right. The number one person that got me going to where I am today, for sure.
Candace, speak to me, if you would, about the importance of mentorship in your industry.
It's extremely important. Again, I mean, we, as a student, you start thinking you're going to try this or that. And really, in all honesty, when you're in your early 20s, what do you really know? Again, you come out, if you don't have any firsthand knowledge. I mean, none of my family was in this kind of an industry. Nobody that could have took my hand and say, well, try here, try there, go here, go there. Speak to this person or speak to that one. No one was there to do that. My first boss, Scott Rambo, he started me off slowly, and eventually he started to introduce me in other areas. And, would you be interested in this? Would you like to try this? Or how about if you want to try to step into this area a little bit? And I've stepped into every area of this business, and eventually it progressed into project management.
So tell me about that. What's your role now in project management?
So again, I know it seems like a leap to go from drafting, sitting down and designing on a computer, to project management. So I guess initially I started with the office work and of course the drafting and whatnot. And then that comes hand in hand with the estimating. And if you get a little more comfortable in those areas, you step into the tendering process. From that, it broadened into safety and security and the admin work and whatnot. So as long as you're willing to try, there's no limits.
100%. I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of moving parts on a big project. There has to be a lot of moving parts. Must be a few sleepless nights in there, wondering if it's all going to come together.
Definitely. Start to finish, a project is challenging if you take into account the starting point of tendering and bidding and getting the work, managing the work, hiring your crew, managing your sub-trades, handling the safety, making sure all this stuff comes together to, from your ordering to your purchasing to your invoicing, everything comes together. But that's where my mentor helped me see that that's where I fit.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah.
One piece of this is not enough. It's not enough. I want all of it. I love doing all of it.
That's excellent. And it must be really rewarding to see a finished product,
Definitely.
Tell me about that. What's one of the most rewarding projects you've ever worked on?
Well, one of my last projects with LSG was the Pentecostal Church in Gander. It was a very long project. It took a lot of work. It was drawn out over a number of years, and it was very challenging, to say the least. But when we were there for the grand opening of the church, and you have a congregation of 500 or 600 people, and you see exactly how they celebrated, it was fabulous. Yeah. We felt as if we'd done the most wonderful thing.
Well, you did, right? I mean, that's a heck of a contribution to the community, society largely. And I mean, the construction industry is just that, is it not? It's supporting our communities, people within the communities, building and growing the community together. And you couldn't find a better association or a group to be a part of than the Construction Association to be a part of that. I'm curious, Candace, from the outside looking in, just so you know, I can hardly swing a hammer. So from the outside looking in, there wouldn't be a whole lot of women in the industry. Am I right to assume that? And where do you see that going in the future? So where do you see that going in the future?
I've sat in numerous board meetings, numerous site meetings, numerous progress meetings, and there's very few women. Very few women in trades. I think the preconceived notion that it's a male industry is still there. Yep. Still there. And right. I'm not saying that it's easy to step into a male-dominated industry. It's certainly not. It certainly has had its challenges. But there's no reason why you can't. There is no reason. There's no reason that my daughter can't do the same thing that I'm doing. You just got to decide that's what you want and go for it.
Right. And of course, go ahead, Jerry.
But Well, it's interesting. I said to you in the preamble before we started recording, I have two nieces in Halifax, and I want them to be able to be exposed to as much as possible. It's interesting, though, that you chose this career. Your mentor was male. I mean, I think the fact that you're even on this podcast will expose the fact that you're in a role to other females, which is incredibly important. But you kind of blazed your own path, didn't you? You didn't see a lot of women in these roles. So,
No,
right.
no.
Did that?
I've always said, my boss and I have joked many times that I thrive when I'm thrown in the fire. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic, Candice. I mean, for sure, your presence in the industry is showing a lead mark to other young women that might be joining. And so it sounds to me like there's a whole lot of opportunity in the construction industry right now, not only for women, but for young people as well. Would you agree with that?
Definitely. We do have generally speaking, an aging population. A lot of our, foremen, supervisors, even our workers, they are going up in age, of course, and we need people to replace them eventually. Right now, I see a great opportunity for a great amount of mentorship. You have these 50 and 60-year-old people who are soon looking to retire. They need the young people to step in now and say, yeah, I'd love to learn that. I'd love to do it. They're fabulous at what they do. They know what they're doing. They just need the people to train to pass on all their qualities and training and knowledge and experience. And we don't want to lose it.
No.
100%.
Right?
100%. And it's kind of interesting work, right? Like we go back to that, you get to see the work that you're doing. In many cases, you get to be outdoors. You get to, all of the great things are all part of that industry. It's just a matter of how do we entice the youth to be a part of it? How do we show them that there's a great opportunity there? And I think you hit the nail on the head there, that there is a lot of opportunity and there's a lot of mentors that are willing to pass on their knowledge. All you have to do is put up your hand and say, yeah, I'd like to be a part of that.
Step in and run with it.
Step in, or as you say, get thrown into the fire.
Yes, I thrive that way.
Candice, I'm going to mention, a little birdie told me that you were involved in a project after your education, Swiss Chalet. Can you tell us a little bit about that project? And I believe your mom was involved in some way. You showed her the project. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
So my mom is a fabulous lady. She was a single mother. She raised 3 children. My biggest push came from her all the time, but she didn't work much. I mean, she stayed home and she raised all of us. So she moved to Gander shortly after I did. And she would hear me talk about my work, and I can talk about my work for endless hours. And she's the one that hears it all, but she never really visualized, I guess, or seen what I did on a day-to-day basis. So our site supervisor decided to retire early. It was mid-December. We had food inspections scheduled for the 3rd of January. So when he decided to go home early, I worked all Christmas to make this building open.
Wow.
So, and I even cleaned it. But anyway, that's another story. So this one day I was up there and I never got to spend much time with her over that Christmas and whatnot. So I said, I have to go up and check on the building. You want to come with me? And it was vacant. There was no one there. And I picked her up and we went over and I walked her through and she said, wow, you did this? That's amazing. I'm so proud of you. And it's just one of those things that stand out.
How'd that make you feel, Candice, in the moment? How did that make you feel?
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Of course. I don't need constant approval now. I mean, but the thing is when you realize the person you respect the most in the world looks at you and says, well, look at what she did.
Yeah.
And it makes her proud. That makes you feel like you just climbed Mount Everest.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. That's great. Great story for sure. Candice, we always ask our guests to leave the audience with one small piece of advice, a takeaway that people can think about. You've had a great career. Clearly, you're not afraid to get into the fire, as you say, and with a lot of moving parts. What would that piece of advice be? Maybe to somebody like yourself starting off, maybe in grade 11, PWC, wondering what the future looks like. Where do I fit in? What would that piece of advice be?
I had a conversation with my daughter not too long ago, and she's not 100% sure what she wants to do yet. And I have a tendency to push. And it's one thing that I said to her. She asked me, she said, Mom, she said, why do you push so hard? And I said, my darling, you need to be bigger, better, stronger than I ever will be. The main point in me focusing on this mentorship and women apprentices, women entrepreneurs, women in the industry, young people, whatnot, is we need to force them to be bigger, better, stronger. That's how they're going to get there, is by us helping them along the way, being their voice, being their advocate, being their mentor, and showing them that they can do whatever they want to do.
That's fantastic advice. They can do whatever they want to do. And what a position for a young person to be in, to understand that there's an industry out there, there's a group of people out there that want to see them succeed, want them to be better, stronger, want them to help build their community, build their society. That's great. Jerry, what are your thoughts?
You got to get up every day and do something that's interesting. And I think you're doing that, and you're a role model for young ladies in this community. I think Alan and I want to lift people up with what we're doing with Gale Force Winds, and now, under contract with building Newfoundland and Labrador. And I'm just so pleased to be able to bring to light what it is you're doing. So thank you.
And thank you.
Well, what another wonderful edition of Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast. It was great to be in conversation with Candice. Candice, there's no doubt about it. You're not afraid of a challenge. You're a genuine leader. You want to mentor people. You're showing young women and young people in general that there's a future here. There's a path in this industry. And I want to thank you for the leadership that you're providing. This podcast is being presented by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association, produced by the Gale Force Winds Group. And I want to leave the audience with my own piece of advice, and that is the construction industry needs more Candice Dominics. Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in to the Building Newfoundland and Labrador podcast, presented by the Newfoundland and Labrador Construction Association, produced by Gale Force Winds.